Some people don't betray you with a knife. They do it with a smile. They praise you, support you, and pretend to care. But beneath the surface, they're calculating, manipulating, waiting. The most dangerous enemy is not the one who declares war. It's the one who pretends to be your friend. Machiavelli warned, "Those who trust too easily are the first to fall." In The Prince, he made it clear, good faith is not a strength in a world ruled by appearance and ambition. And Stoic wisdom agrees, clarity is power. If you can't spot the lie, you become the victim of it. This video will give you the eyes to see what most people miss. You'll learn Machiavelli's 7 psychological tactics to detect deception, not through emotion, but through patterns, slips, and silence. You'll see how liars reveal themselves through over-explaining, rehearsed phrases, facial micro-expressions, and sudden stiffness when they think no one's watching. If you've been lied to before, this is your armor. If you've been manipulated, this is your clarity. So like the video and subscribe to the channel, because in a world built on mass, we don't guess, we observe. Let's begin.
Number 1.
Watch for unnecessary details. A liar rarely tells a clean story. They don't get to the point. They dance around it. Instead of answering directly, they build a house of words filled with irrelevant furniture. What they were wearing, what song was playing, what their friends said earlier that day. Why? Because they believe the more they speak, the more you'll believe. But truth, as the Stoics remind us, is simple. It doesn't beg to be believed. It stands on its own. Niccolo Machiavelli understood that deception thrives not in darkness, but in distraction. When someone gives you a flood of unnecessary detail, it's not a sign of honesty. It's often a tactic of manipulation. The more complex the story, the harder it is to trace. The more they say, the more they hope you won't notice what they didn't say. Now let's bring in the Stoic perspective. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth." That's the mark of an honest mind, willingness to be seen clearly. Liars don't share that. They fear clarity. That's why they wrap their story in emotional excess and manufactured complexity. They're not giving you facts. They're performing. This performance is built on a simple assumption. You'll equate passion with truth, but don't be fooled. Truth doesn't always wear emotion. Sometimes it arrives quietly, calmly. The truth doesn't need to seduce, it just needs to be spoken. But the liar, unsure of their story's strength, piles on adjectives, reactions, and drama in hopes of blinding you with narrative fog. Consider the example of Leonardo da Vinci. He said, "Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication." In communication, the same principle applies. When someone tells you something real, they don't oversell it. They're not afraid of silence. They don't try to fill the space with noise. But the liar fears stillness, because in stillness, inconsistencies echo. And here's the dangerous part. If you're not trained to detect this, you might feel comforted by their oversharing. You might think, why would someone lie and be so detailed? But you must flip the question, why are they working so hard to be believed? Truth tellers don't memorize scripts. They don't repeat the same phrasing every time, because they're recalling, not creating. And that's the difference. Stoic philosopher Epictetus warned us, appearances are of 4 kinds. Things are either what they appear to be, or not, or neither, or both. So our job is to stop accepting appearance as truth, and instead learn to watch with a discerning mind. So what do you do when faced with this tactic? Pause, replay their story in your mind, but strip out the color. What's actually left? Did they answer the question? Did they speak to the core issue, or just talk around it? If their response feels like a movie with great music but no plot, trust that instinct. The Stoic doesn't rush to accuse. but neither does he pretend not to see. In real conversation, don't be afraid to ask, "Why is that important?" Or, "How does that relate to what I asked?" You're not being rude, you're being precise, and precision is the enemy of deception. Because in the end, unnecessary detail isn't about clarity, it's about control. The liar wants to guide your focus away from what matters, but the Stoic brings it back, quietly, firmly, and without emotion. As Seneca said, no man can have a peaceful life who thinks too much about lengthening it. The same applies to truth. The longer someone tries to stretch it, the more it breaks. So listen closely, not just to what is said, but to why it's being said. The truth doesn't beg for belief, it just is.
Number 2.
Look for micro-flashes of incongruence. The mouth can lie, but the face struggles to keep up. For a fraction of a second, before the mind catches itself, the truth leaks out. A twitch of the eyebrow, a flicker of contempt, a momentary flash of fear or guilt. These are micro-expressions, brief, involuntary facial movements that betray what a person really feels, no matter what words they use. And they are one of the clearest signs that someone is not aligned with their own story. Machiavelli taught that the art of deception is rooted in performance. But even the best actors eventually falter, especially under pressure. And that's where micro-incongruence becomes visible. A person says they're happy for you, but their smile is strained. They offer support, but their eyes harden when you succeed. It lasts less than a second, but if you're paying attention, it's enough. The Stoics were masters of observation, not just of nature or society, but of human behavior. Seneca once said, "A man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions." When someone's words are grand but their face slips into disdain, they reveal the true ambition: envy, rivalry, manipulation. The Stoic mind does not judge harshly, but it sees clearly, and this clarity is what protects you. Let's make this practical. You're in a conversation, someone is telling you how proud they are of your recent success, but you catch it, just for a blink. Their eyes narrow, their jaw tightens, their tone shifts ever so slightly. They keep talking, maybe even smiling, but something didn't match. That mismatch is your signal. The Stoics didn't call it micro-expression, but they trained this awareness. Epictetus taught his students to examine impressions. Don't just accept them, test them, weigh them. Because when words and expressions don't align, one of them is false, and the face is harder to fake. Even in history, we see this principle. Look at Steve Jobs, someone known not just for innovation, but intense intuition. His colleagues often said he had a knack for sensing dishonesty before anything was said outright. He'd study a person's posture, tone, and yes, the face. He didn't rely on reports, he relied on what he saw when a person wasn't trying to be watched. This is where the Stoic principle of awareness becomes your sharpest tool. In a world full of performers, the Stoic doesn't match the act. He steps back, he observes, he watches for incongruence, not to accuse, but to understand what's real, because truth has harmony, deception stutters. You might ask, what do I do when I notice these flashes? The answer isn't confrontation, it's calibration. Adjust your expectations, pull back emotionally. You don't need to call someone a liar to know they aren't safe. The Stoic doesn't burn bridges impulsively, but he doesn't cross them blindly either. Moreover, pay attention during transitions. When the topic changes suddenly, when they think you're not looking, when silence stretches, that's when the mask slips, the liar's energy drops, their eyes drift, their real self leaks out in the in-between moments. So the next time someone speaks sweetly but something in your body says off, listen, not to paranoia, but to pattern. Don't dismiss the blink of a frown. Don't excuse the hesitation that didn't match the joy. The truth doesn't hide in the words. It hides in the inconsistency, in the misalignment between speech and spirit. Because ultimately, to see what others miss, you must slow down, not to overthink, but to perceive. And as Marcus Aurelius wrote, learn to read the signs. Nature is full of them. So is human nature. Read them well.
Number 3.
Recognize rehearsed repetition. When someone lies, they don't improvise. They memorize. Their story becomes a script, rehearsed, polished, and repeated word for word. It doesn't evolve. It doesn't breathe. And that's exactly why it feels unnatural. A liar isn't remembering. They're performing. Their words are smooth, but their delivery is rigid. It's not storytelling, it's playback. Machiavelli understood that deception depends on control, especially the control of perception. A rehearsed lie is designed to sound consistent, and yet that very consistency is unnatural. Real memory is not a recording, it's a living process. It pauses, it reflects, it forgets a detail here, adds something new there. It grows with time, not because it's being manipulated, but because it's being remembered. This is where the Stoic mindset gives you an edge, Marcus Aurelius warned. Never value anything as profitable to you, which shall compel you to act the hypocrite. And a liar by nature must act the hypocrite. Their entire story is built on a contradiction, an external performance masking an internal dishonesty. And that contradiction creates tension. It shows in their voice, their posture, their repeated phrasing, even in their forced stillness. You can feel the strain. So here's what to watch for. When someone recounts a real event, their language flows naturally. It may change slightly with time, because new emotions emerge, or because reflection has added depth. But when a person repeats the exact same story, in the exact same way every single time, it's a sign. It means they've rehearsed not for accuracy, but for control. Now test the story, not by confrontation, but by redirection. Ask for the timeline in reverse. Jump to the middle. Ask what happened after the supposed ending, or before the beginning. If they're honest, they'll pause, think, and find their way back. But if they're lying, you've just pulled them off script, and they'll stumble. Epictetus taught, if you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters. That includes the willingness to ask simple questions others might overlook. The power isn't in the complexity, it's in the timing. If someone becomes tense when asked a basic, sincere follow-up, that's not a reaction to your curiosity. It's a reaction to being unscripted. Their mask wasn't built for spontaneous truth. It was built to maintain a rehearsed illusion. A great example of unrehearsed truth is Elon Musk speaking about Tesla's near failure. He doesn't speak in polished sound bites. He falters, his voice breaks. His memory, though imperfect, is real, because pain doesn't memorize. It imprints. That's how you can tell. Real emotion doesn't play back perfectly. It shows its cracks, its rawness, its discomfort. But that's what makes it real. Also notice the tone. A repeated lie often carries the same rhythm, the same cadence, as if the speaker is reading a passage they've internalized. There's no spark of discovery, no reflection, just delivery. Truth has variation. Lies repeat, not just in words, but in structure, pace, and effort. And here's the key insight. Truth survives interruption. It may pause, but it recovers. Lies depend on momentum. They rely on uninterrupted flow. That's why liars often panic when a question breaks their rhythm. They're not creating, they're reciting, and recitation collapses when the pattern is broken. So what do? You don't accuse. You observe, you ask calmly, you take note. The Stoic doesn't rush to judgment, but neither does he ignore patterns. As Seneca said, time reveals truth. And repetition reveals the one thing liars can't escape: their dependence on control. Ultimately, airtight stories don't breathe, and if it doesn't breathe, it isn't alive. The Stoic doesn't need to attack the lie. He only needs to see it, to notice the loop, to test the flexibility, and to remember. The truth doesn't fear questions, but a lie cannot stand still when the script falls apart.
Number 4.
Trap them with a verbal maze. A skilled liar depends on rhythm. They build their story like a stage. Controlled lighting, timed lines, every scene rehearsed to appear seamless. But here's the flaw. Their script only works when the path is predictable. Disrupt that path, and the structure begins to collapse. Not with noise, but with precision. This is where the verbal maze comes in. Not confrontation, not accusation. Just questions, subtle, unexpected, and slightly off pattern. You don't need to corner a liar, you just need to let them trip over their own words. And the best way to do that is to create a space where they have to think, not just recite. Machiavelli taught that information is power, but so is confusion, not the chaos of random doubt, but strategic inquiry, questions that pull the speaker out of their mental routine and into improvisation. And that's where the truth survives. But lies start to unravel. Because lies are memorized, truth is lived. The Stoics practiced a similar discipline. They didn't argue. They examined, Epictetus told his students. First learn the meaning of what you say and then speak. But liars do the opposite. They speak first, hoping you won't notice that meaning never arrives. When you gently ask them to revisit a timeline, to explain a choice, or clarify a contradiction, they stumble. Not because the question is hard, but because they've never had to answer it honestly. Let's say someone is explaining a situation. Everything sounds polished, a little too polished. Instead of nodding, ask, what happened right before that? Or, why that option instead of the other? You're not challenging, you're exploring. And exploration is what every liar fears. Now watch what happens. A truthful person adapts. They pause, reflect, adjust. But a liar does the opposite. They deflect or repeat themselves word for word, or suddenly offer way too much information in a rush to cover cracks. This isn't clarity, it's collapse. Consider Tim Cook, CEO of Apple. He's known not for dominating conversations, but for asking quiet, piercing questions, questions that seem simple, yet force the speaker to reveal whether they truly understand their position or are just performing. That's the Stoic strategy, not force, but focused observation, not volume, but presence. And it works because it allows the truth to emerge without being forced. Here's another subtle tactic. Return to a previous part of the story and ask for clarification. Say, wait, earlier you said X, but now it sounds like Y. Help me understand. You're not accusing, you're inviting clarity, but if they're lying, they'll often shift tone. They may contradict themselves or worse, blame you for mishearing. That's not a mistake. That's a mass slipping. Seneca once wrote, if you would judge, investigate. This is what Stoics do. They investigate with calm eyes and steady hearts. They don't react to emotion. They observe logic. The Stoic listens not just to what is said, but to the quality behind it. Is the person present? Are they speaking from grounded understanding or from fear of being found out? And here's the part liars never prepare for: curiosity. They prepare for confrontation. They script defenses for accusation. But when you don't accuse, when you simply wonder, ask and remain still, they unravel because their mask was designed for one battle, not this one. So build the maze, not to trap, but to reveal. Ask gently, Let silence stretch. Revisit small things. Notice how they respond. Because truth doesn't fear detours. It walks them with calm, but lies stumble the moment the road turns. The Stoic doesn't interrogate. He investigates. He knows the truth doesn't need to be forced. It only needs room to speak. And when it does, it never stutters.
Number 5.
Test their loyalty with a lie of your own. Sometimes the only way to expose disloyalty is not by waiting, but by planting. Not a malicious lie, a crafted one, a silent signal to see who carries it forward. Because people don't always reveal themselves through what they say. They reveal themselves through what they repeat. This tactic isn't about deception for harm, it's about detection for protection. When words and intentions are unclear, you offer bait, a piece of false information that only one person hears. Then you wait. If it comes back to you as gossip, distortion, or exposure, you've found your answer. Machiavelli warned, never confuse proximity with loyalty. Just because someone stands beside you doesn't mean they stand for you. People often smile while holding the dagger, but when you seed a lie and track its path, you reveal who cannot be trusted, not by confrontation, but by consequence. The Stoics weren't naive about trust, Seneca wrote. It is more shameful to distrust our friends than to be deceived by them. But the goal isn't to live in suspicion, it's to gain clarity. You're not distrusting everyone. You're testing alignment. Because the Stoic doesn't fear betrayal, he simply refuses to ignore the signs. Let's make it concrete. Say you share a made-up detail with someone. Nothing harmful, just oddly specific. Then you wait, a few days pass, and then you hear it. Second-hand, third-hand, reshaped, but still tied to your original fiction. That's not a rumor. That's a map. One that tells you more than any confession ever could. This works because opportunists crave leverage. They want to seem important. They use secrets as currency. But those who are loyal, they treat your words with stillness. They hold what isn't theirs to share. They protect what was never meant to echo back. Consider Oprah Winfrey, a woman who built an empire not just on what she said, but on what she protected. In interviews, she reflects on how quickly she notices who leaks and who listens, not because she spies, but because she pays attention when silence is broken. From the Stoic view, this is emotional Aikido. You use another's movement to reveal their intent. You don't accuse, you don't chase, you simply observe what returns to you and adjust. Because loyalty doesn't need to be tested through conflict, it shows itself through behavior. To be clear, this is not about paranoia, it's about pruning. You don't use this method often, you use it when instinct quietly warns you that something isn't clean, that something, or someone, is leaking energy where it shouldn't. Is this tactic manipulative? Not if it's rooted in restraint. You're not playing games, you're revealing games that were already being played. Just as a blacksmith uses fire to test metal, you use a small fiction to test the integrity of trust. You're not hunting betrayal, you're verifying strength. Remember, the Stoic doesn't surrender his peace to suspicion. He watches, he listens, he waits to see what people do when they think no one is watching. And those moments when a lie returns to your doorstep are not for outrage, they're for decision, quiet, precise, necessary adjustment. Here's the final piece. Those who fail this test rarely apologize. They attack. They accuse you of being manipulative. They project their guilt onto your awareness. That's not misunderstanding, that's defense. And the Stoic is ready for that too. Not with retaliation, but with distance. Use this test not out of fear, but out of focus. Loyalty isn't proven by promises, it's revealed through presence, and nothing exposes it faster than silence broken by betrayal. The Stoic doesn't demand loyalty, he watches for it. And once he sees the truth, he doesn't explain. He exits, because the goal is never revenge. It's peace, and peace begins where illusion ends. Number 6, offer a controlled confession. Sometimes the most powerful way to reveal someone's nature is to lower your guard. Strategically, you share something that sounds vulnerable, slightly incriminating, but controlled. A fake confession, not to deceive, but to observe. Because when you expose a part of yourself, real or not, the way others respond reveals exactly who they are. Machiavelli understood this well. He warned that the powerful often use vulnerability not as a weakness, but as a trap. People are disarmed by honesty. It makes them feel closer, more trusted. And when someone thinks you've handed them something valuable, they often feel compelled to reciprocate or exploit it. This is where Stoicism offers an internal compass. You're not confessing to be liked. You're not pretending to be weak. You're initiating a test of integrity. Seneca once wrote, "A gift consists not in what is done or given, but in the intention of the giver." Your intention here is clarity. You're giving someone a moment to show their true face. So how does it work? You offer a small controlled disclosure, one that seems real but doesn't cost you anything. It could be a mistake, a regret, a challenge, something that feels personal but isn't volatile. Then you wait and watch. If the person is genuine, they'll treat your moment with care. Maybe they'll open up, maybe they'll remain neutral, but they won't weaponize it. They won't use it as gossip. They won't file it away for future control. But if they're disloyal, manipulative, or opportunistic, you'll see it, they'll repeat it, embellish it, use it to signal power to others, or suddenly shift their energy around you, subtly treating you with less respect. That reaction is the truth you were looking for. This is what the Stoics called living according to nature, acting with intention, not impulse. You're not fishing for approval, you're testing for character, and real character always shows when it thinks it has something over you. Let's take a real example. Maya Angelou once said, "When people show you who they are, believe them the first time." She didn't mean dramatic declarations. She meant the small, quiet responses people give when no one's performing, when no one's watching. That's what this tactic targets. You don't confess to be pitied. You confess to provoke silence or betrayal. And that silence, if respected, becomes trust. If broken, becomes your answer. One of the most underestimated forms of intelligence is emotional baiting. Not manipulation, observation. The ability to set a scene and let someone reveal themselves. The Stoics didn't chase people. They didn't argue character. They watch patterns. And this method gives you a front row seat to someone's pattern under pressure. And here's the key. Never overuse this tactic. It should be rare, reserved, because its power lies in its subtlety. If you constantly present false vulnerability, it loses impact. But when done with precision, it cuts through masks people didn't even know they were wearing. And what if the person passes the test? Then you know, not from words, but from silence, from how they protected something that had no reward attached to it. That's how trust is earned, not from loyalty declared, but from loyalty withheld from the crowd. So use this tool not to deceive, but to discern. Offer something soft and see who holds it gently, because in that moment, they're not managing your story, they're revealing their own. The Stoic doesn't test people to control them, he tests to see them. And once he sees clearly, he doesn't cling or chase. He adjusts, because nothing reveals depth of character more than how someone holds what they think is your weakness. Number 7, observe their body in still moments. When someone lies, they're not just managing their words, they're performing. And like any performance, it takes energy. The smile, the eye contact, the hand gestures, it's all carefully constructed. But the second they think the stage is empty, the mask slips. This is where your attention must sharpen, because liars aren't caught in motion. They're caught in stillness. In the pause between conversations, in the micro drop of tension when no one is watching, the Stoics believe character is shown not in how someone acts when observed, but in who they are when left alone with themselves. Machiavelli pointed out that people reveal more through their habits than their speeches. And this is especially true of body language. When a liar finishes their tale, don't just listen. Watch. Their face may return to neutral too quickly. Their shoulders might slump. Their breathing may shift. Because maintaining a lie is exhausting, and the moment they think they've convinced you is when the effort ends and the truth begins. This doesn't require being a body language expert. It requires presence, and this is where Stoic practice becomes power. Marcus Aurelius trained his mind to remain calm and alert, not to judge, but to observe. He wrote, "Learn to read the soul through the eyes." And the soul doesn't lie when it thinks no one is reading. You might notice small signs: a hand clenched under a table, a foot tapping relentlessly, a glance downward that doesn't match the confidence of their words. These are not definitive proofs, but they're indicators, and the wise man connects signals, not just statements. Consider Leonardo da Vinci. He was fascinated with the way people moved when they thought no one noticed. He filled his journals with sketches of hands at rest, faces in thought, and the subtle ways emotion leaked through posture. He knew that stillness reveals truth the way shadow reveals shape. Movement hides intention, but stillness shows it. The Stoic doesn't jump to conclusions. He collects patterns. He watches for consistency between word and gesture. He notices when the story sounds confident, but the body betrays unease. This is not paranoia. It's clarity. It's a form of listening deeper than sound. There's a moment just after someone finishes lying when their body resets. Watch for that. A drop in tone, a sudden deep breath, a quiet, almost imperceptible sigh of relief. That's not peace, it's release. The performance is over, and in that break, their truth leaks through. But here's the key: don't react. The moment you signal suspicion, they re-engage the performance. Instead, hold your silence. Let them continue believing you bought the story. The Stoic uses silence as strategy, not to manipulate, but to gain insight. Over time, this posture, calm, attentive, silent, becomes your edge. You begin to see what others miss. You notice how someone's eyes shift when asked a simple question, how their posture stiffens when you circle back to a detail, how their warmth fades the moment they think they've succeeded. The point isn't to catch people in lies for sport, it's to refine your discernment. Not everyone deserves your trust, and not everyone who speaks well means well. But those who are true will remain steady in stillness. Their body won't betray their words because their words aren't hiding anything. So watch the still moments. Study the quiet seconds after someone thinks they've convinced you, and let their own body give you the answers their mouth won't. Because the Stoic doesn't beg for truth, he watches for it. And when it appears, not in speeches, but in sighs, pauses, and posture, he doesn't confront, he confirms. Then he chooses peace over proximity, wisdom over reaction, stillness over illusion. If this video spoke to something deep in you, if you're tired of being lied to, manipulated, or drained, then you're not alone. What you just learned isn't a game. It's survival through awareness, it's clarity over chaos, and it's a path walked not with noise but with stillness. The Stoic doesn't expose liars to feel powerful, he sees them and lets them expose themselves. So if this resonated, if you found even one tactic that opened your eyes, I ask one thing. Like the video and subscribe to this channel, not just to support the message, but to remind yourself to keep walking the path of clarity, composure, and control. This isn't about revenge. It's about peace. And the more of us who learn to move in silence, the louder the truth becomes. So stay sharp, stay steady, and I'll see you in the next one, where we go even deeper.